Mr. Foxman made a statement. I looked at his statement, and wherever I saw the word Armenian, I, in my mind, substituted the word Jewish, and wherever I saw the word genocide, I substituted the word Holocaust. And I said, would I be satisfied if this were the response of my leaders? And my answer was no.
I'm also here as a former ADL employee, someone who worked in the national office in New York, and someone who's frankly very disturbed by what's, I think, happening to a great organization with a really misguided national leader at this point. And I would encourage people not to underestimate just how difficult change from within at ADL is going to be, just because of the way the organization is structured and the leadership style of Abe Foxman. Continue to do everything you can to put pressure on the national leadership, because it's going to take a lot of pressure on the national leadership and support for the regional board to get a change to happen. So thank you.
I think if it becomes a swell and more than one town withdraws, then I think you'll have some action. So I think it's important to give it a day or two and let's see what happens. And then if we have to, then I guess we have to have meetings with some of the other towns and do something.
I think everyone in this room is united by one common thread, and that is we want to see justice for the Armenian people. We want to see a full, complete recognition of the Armenian genocide by the ADL, and the ADL becoming one of the active supporters of the legislation to recognize to have the United States recognize the historic fact of the Armenian genocide. And I think we're all prepared to go as far as we need to make sure that those ends are realized.
When you're a victim of a violent crime, whether it's an individual, a subgroup, or a nation, until the story is validated, accepted, affirmed, and responded to with appropriate outrage, the crime continues to scar them. And that's truly the story of the Armenian. The Jewish community of New England stood up and did what was right. And that's why I urge us in the town of Belmont to sever the ties. Not because there's anything against No Place for Hate. It's, as you've highlighted, and all of us know, it's a tremendous program. The sponsors of No Place for Hate are propagating continued pain. And I can't imagine a community like this, with the good people of Belmont, wanting to be associated with an organization that is actively hurting our own people in this community.
It isn't just about acknowledging the Armenian genocide. It's acknowledging all genocides here, now, in the future, and saying before our government, this is fact. This happened. It would be such an incredible experience to see a resolution passed while there are still survivors left on earth.
Mr. Foxman and the National ADL conceded that the quote, consequences of events in Turkey from 1915 to 1923 were, quote, tantamount to genocide, unquote. Unfortunately, or perhaps deliberately, and I would say deliberately, Mr. Foxman sidestepped the legal definition of genocide by avoiding any language that would imply intent on the part of the Turkish government at the time, which is a critical part of the 1948 UN Genocide Treaty. And this was obviously just an apparent attempt to appease Turkey's denialist regime. Mr. Foxman then proceeded to apologize to the Prime Minister of Turkey for having put his government in a, quote, difficult position, expressing his, quote, sorrow over what we have caused for the leadership and people of Turkey. No apology to the Armenian Americans. No apology to the heirs of the victims of the Armenian genocide. And to you Armenians who've gathered here today, I'm glad you've come out, but I want you to do one more thing. Call up your town selectmen. Let them know how you feel about Armenian genocide denial in our town. And if you think that it might be a little uncomfortable, I want you to remember how uncomfortable it was for your grandparents and your ancestors to get to here. Because as far as I'm concerned, the ADL can do this somewhere else, but not in our town.
The ADL, in defending its position against the resolution, projects 3 negative consequences of passing this resolution. 1, that it will be counterproductive to a reconciliation between Turks and Armenians. 2, that it may put at risk the Turkish-Jewish community. And 3, that it may put at risk the important relationship between Turkey, Israel, and the United States. In response to these concerns, first, there can be no reconciliation between the Turks and Armenians without Turkey's recognition of the genocide and its acceptance of the Ottoman government's role in perpetrating the genocide. There can be no reconciliation without truth. Second, if the ADL is afraid of Turkey's response to the passing of this resolution, then it is Turkey they should blame, not the American Armenian community. The relationship among the U.S., Turkey, and Israel as it stands now is based on hypocrisy.
I am here to tell you that we Armenians are fed up with the callous and insensitive suggestions that have been proposed to us. My grandmother was 5 years old when she was taken from her home and told to start walking. What she remembered most was being told by her mother before she died to take care of her 3-year-old brother. So the two of them continued alone, and she held her brother's hand, walking through the deserts for weeks until one day she found that she had lost him. Somewhere along the way, she became too weak or too tired or too delirious to hold a 3-year-old boy's hand, and he was lost forever. Lost forever except in my grandmother's mind, because for the rest of her life, this 5-year-old girl lived with the guilt of letting her brother die alone in the desert. Until the last weeks of her life, when she was most confused, she was tearing around the nursing home, still trying to find Edward. When I think of my grandmother's guilt and her pain, and I think of these suggestions that have been made to Armenians, I am outraged. And when I read the statements between Mr. Foxman and Turkish officials referring to this crisis as an uncomfortable episode that Turks must endure, I'm incensed. I have lost the ability to be patient with the politicians and the people who want me to wait a bit while they think things over. For these reasons, it is impossible to accept anything less than unequivocal genocide acknowledgement and support from the ADL and the No Place for Hate program. However commendable some of its programs are, No Place for Hate has no business in this town while the ADL holds to its position.
The ADL has been operating in a selective manner by which to defend human rights. It would choose and pick which human rights issue to defend and which to ignore, or even sidestep and diminish some issues of human rights violations to the magnitude of the Holocaust, such as the Armenian Genocide by the Ottoman Empire. The ADL charter reads, its ultimate purpose is to secure justice and fair treatment to all citizens. The ADL has lost its the moral ground and cannot be trusted to guide and protect the human rights values of all our fellow citizens in Belmont.
I just want to bring to the committee's attention a very important distinction that Samantha Power, who is director of the Carr Center for Human Rights at Harvard, made in her book, A Problem from Hell. If, she said, if only America had been made up of more upstanders instead of bystanders, would be in a very different position today. And I guess I'm asking this committee to be upstanders instead of bystanders of the Armenian Genocide.
I'm on the board of Belmont Against Racism. Having listened to everyone here tonight, Jonathan and I think, certainly are going to be going back to our board and recommending that we take a formal vote and send it to the commission as well as the selectmen, indicating that we would be supportive of the town severing its relationship with the ADL at this time.
So I move that Belmont recommends to the Board of Selectmen that it sever its ties to the ADL-sponsored No Place for Hate campaign until such time as ADL recognizes the Armenian Genocide as an historic fact and support House and Senate Resolution 106. All in favor? Aye.